There's a place hundreds of feet below Geneva, Switzerland, where it can be colder than deep space, or over 7 trillion degrees Fahrenheit. A place where the earliest moments of our universe are created 1 billion times per second, and where scientists look not for what is present, but for what is missing. These absences have allowed humankind to come closer than it's ever been to answer life's biggest questions. What are we made of? What is the universe made of? How did it start? Why is gravity so weak? Why is there more matter than antimatter in the universe? Perhaps most care not for the ratio of matter to antimatter, nor for the strength of gravity outside of its influence on how much we weigh. Yet at this very moment, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, or CERN, has over 2,000 scientists and engineers from over 100 countries working in this underground laboratory to further decades of research and are continuing to expand our understanding of the natural world. As an important extension of the code of ethics guiding their pursuits is from my own research that I will give you an accurate but generalized review of CERN and their laboratory. It is physics after all. First, I'll speak to their history and why it was conceived. Next, I'll give you a brief overview of what they do. And then finally, I'll touch on their contributions to society. While particle physics as a field of study is infinitely complex and is an ever-growing influence on our civilization, CERN's beginnings were rooted in 2 simple concepts: peace and innovation. Following the decline of European research investment after the Great Depression and World War II, physicists wanted to re-engage European governments and the money that they could provide for funding to the scientific process. With the rising demand and costly nuclear research, physicists proposed a consortium, and according to CERN's website, they wanted to, quote, solve the greatest mysteries of the universe and foster peace through innovation. After multiple failed attempts to create such an organization in the 1940s, it wasn't until 1951 that the idea gained enough support to establish a European Council on Nuclear Research. Several years later, 12 countries joined together and formed and formally created CERN and became the organization that it is today. As other leading organizations had chosen in the decades prior, Geneva, Switzerland was chosen as the site for CERN's headquarters, as well as the laboratory. Operating several of the over 30,000 particle accelerators in use today, including the largest in the world, CERN houses the most influential laboratory in particle accelerator research. Now, generally speaking, particle accelerators are machines that accelerate elementary particles, such as electrons or protons, along a linear or circular path. These particles are accelerated at nearly the speed of light and either crash into each other or into a fixed object. These particles, then particle accelerators along the path of the accelerator, track, detect, and identify the results, and then this data is uploaded for scientists and engineers to analyze and study. This concept is at the core of CERN's research, and their first experiments were performed on the synchrocyclotron, an accelerator built in 1957 and used for 33 years as a standalone instrument. Then in the decades following, 3 additional particle accelerators were added to CERN's laboratory, each becoming the preceding phase in the collision process for their newer and more powerful successors. First, the proton synchrotron, then the super proton synchrotron, and finally the large electron positron, or LEP. Using electron-positron collisions, the LEP was in operation for 11 years as the final phase of this experimentation. Their long-term strategies for upgrading the LEP existed well before they even built it. Scheduled to eventually replace the LEP in its 17-mile underground tunnel was the Large Hadron Collider. This is an accelerator based on successful proton-proton collisions being done at research at other particle accelerator laboratories. By upgrading to the Large Hadron Collider from the LEP, CERN was able to improve its chances of producing and detecting the Higgs boson, which is a critical particle in physics that was theorized to exist but had not yet been discovered. The importance of this discovery led to some competition from the United States, but the US was ultimately unable to bear the cost or manage the magnitude of this kind of endeavor independently, so they failed in their attempt to build a competing particle accelerator. But the failure by the United States to lead scientific advancement unilaterally reaffirmed the strength and longevity of international cooperation in the name of scientific diplomacy. This was the very foundation upon which CERN first built its legacy. Reflective of their founding principles of collaboration, two of CERN's most notable contributions to society are uniting factors in both society and science. For society, HTML and the construct of the World Wide Web were invented at CERN. As scientists from all over the world would come to Geneva to use the laboratory, there was a growing need to centralize the information that they were using for their research. Recognizing this need and noticing the explosive growth of the internet, a CERN scientist wrote the first browser and server software, which allowed universal access to research documents at institutions and laboratories around the world. Without this universal coding language, the internet would simply not exist as it does today. Scientifically, the Higgs boson was ultimately found at CERN by the Large Hadron Collider in 2012. Nearly 50 years after it had been predicted to exist, scientists not only determined that it does exist, but it is the particle that gives all other particles mass. While this revolutionary discovery solidified the Higgs boson as the center of the standard model of physics, CERN admitted in 2014 that it poses almost as many questions as it answers. As society endeavors to answer such questions, CERN will continue to be a uniting force in the pursuit of truth through science. It was established as a testament to what can be done in the spirit of peace and scientific advancement, but the extent of their influence has not yet fully been realized. Questions remain unanswered. Work has yet to be done. So as CERN continues their research on behalf of humankind, it is in their comprehension of the irreducibly small that we will be drawn ever closer to an understanding of the infinitely large. Thank you.